studied the issues and believes politicians have got it wrong, attacking what he calls the 4 myths surrounding the debate. Joins us now live. Thanks for joining us. What are the 4 myths?
Hello, Kay. Well, I mean, the 2 key ones are, first of all, the myth that this country has a major social mobility problem and that there's virtually no movement, which is just not true. We're actually a very open and very fluid society. And then on top of that, there's a second myth, which is that things have got even worse in recent years than they were before. And I don't think that's true either. I've got a real problem with this social mobility strategy, that the message that's coming out from both sides of politics is that if you're not born with a silver spoon in your mouth, that you're up against real problems and you're probably not going to make it. And that's just not true. The evidence doesn't support that claim.
Although, you know, we can't deny that there's an awful lot of nepotism around, and that does help who your parents happen to play golf or tennis with or whatever else.
Well, it can be an advantage, of course. I don't deny that parents pass on all the privileges that they possibly can to their children. But when you look at the evidence on what produces success, what you find is that talent and hard work far outweigh all these other issues that we're concerned about nepotism on the golf course or buying a private schooling education for your children and so on. Those things can help. They're marginal advantages. But by and large, if you've got all those advantages and you don't have the talent, or if you're lazy, you're probably not going to get very far. And more to the point, even if you don't have those advantages, and this is the key point, that children from the working class who don't have a lot of advantages that their parents can give them, nevertheless, if they're talented and if they work hard, can succeed and do succeed in large numbers. Half of the population in this country is in a different social class from its parents. There's massive movement, and it's movement up the system and down the system. And I do worry that we're sending out this fatalistic negative message to youngsters in particular, saying, I mean, I heard Alan Milburn, for example, the new social mobility czar, on the radio this morning, and he said, invariably, and these were his exact words, I couldn't believe it, he said, invariably, if you're born poor, you die poor. It's absolutely not true. 81% of the children born to parents under the poverty line escape poverty. 4 out of 5 escape poverty. To say if you're born poor, you die poor is just not true. But the message is so fatalistic that Milburn and others are sending out.
Yeah, but it would be, I mean, if we've got 2 kids, for example, both equally hard-working, both equally talented, one of them is born into a middle class or an upper middle class background, one of them is born into a working class background, the other kid's going to do better, aren't they?
No, yes, on average, but not a lot better. And if I put the other alternative to you, which is if you take 2 kids from the same class background, but one is talented and the other isn't, then they will end up in very different situations. The ability and motivation, ability and effort, ability and hard work and drive and determination, they're the 2 factors that are driving this. On the research I've done, ability alone is 3 times more important than your social class background in shaping where you end up in life. That isn't to say that social class advantages don't matter. They do matter, but nowhere near as much as talent and hard work.
And how do we compare to other countries?
Oh, there's a lot of argument about this, as usual. You put a bunch of academics together and they all completely disagree on what the evidence says. Most Western countries don't diverge a lot. If you measure social mobility by how far have you moved in terms of your occupation from the occupation of your parents, then we come out round about the middle, maybe slightly under the middle. But I mean, Germany, for example, is much the same as us on that measure. If you measure it by how much is your income different from your parents, then we appear to be a bit worse than the average. But still, the correlations here are tiny. One of the reports that has influenced the government is a report that says that there's a correlation between the income of your parents when you were born and your income when you become adult yourself. But the correlation is very, very small. It explains just 10% of the variation in your income. 90% of the variation in people's income is unexplained by what their parents were earning. So really the message ought to be, look, with the exception of a small number of kids at the very bottom of the pile who I think have got real problems because they're born into really bad homes with neglectful parents who don't care about them, often substance abuse and these kinds of problems. Those kids really do have problems, and we've got to start targeting. Well, we have started targeting. We've got to put more and more effort into the opportunities available to those children. But they're a small sliver of the population. For the great bulk of the population, it doesn't matter too much whether you're born with a silver spoon or if you're not. The opportunities are there if you want to seize them.
Don't moan, work hard and get on with it then.
Well, yeah. I'll tell you what, my father left school in the 30s, working class boy, left school in the 30s, and his teacher wrote in his autograph book on the day he left school, "Aim high, for though you may not reach the sky, you will most certainly reach the mountaintops." That was the message that we were giving to young working class boys and girls in the 30s. Now the message is, if you're born poor, you're going to die poor, no point in trying. I think it's desperately bad message to be sending to people.
OK, Prof, thanks very much.
Pleasure.